This is the Indianness podcast, stories of success from leaders and change makers of Indian origin. Why have Indians achieved success across so many different disciplines around the globe? I have no idea, but let's find out together. Every story is unique. Very excited to have Dr. Sanjay Rishi with us today. He's the CEO of Work Dynamics for JLL, a global real estate firm. He has also served in global leadership roles at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Johnson Controls, and IBM. I invited him on this show as I was intrigued enough to get his opinion on the role of technology in how we live and how we work. Welcome, Sanjay. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on our podcast.
Sanjay, it's a pleasure and a privilege. I'm looking forward to our conversation. It should be fun.
I think it'll be a lot of fun, especially for our listeners and me. Sanjay, we basically record journeys of people to serve as inspiration for others, and to kind of figure out a journey. You kind of have to go right to the beginning, and that's where we go. So, can you please tell us where you were born and tell us a little bit about your parents also?
I'd be happy to, Sanjay, but I should start by saying success. It's humbling to be called successful. I'll start with that. So I appreciate the vote of confidence. The journey continues. I was born in Delhi. To your question, I grew up, most of my childhood was in a little storybook town called Renukoot. It's about 100 miles from Banaras, Varanasi. And it really was and continues to be a storybook town. If you're familiar with any of the big industrial conglomerates in India, and they would have residential neighborhoods that were built. And this was literally a town on a hill, very safe, very secure, a childhood that was just wonderful. I mean, I tell my kids that I think we were fortunate, those of us that grew up in Renukoot, our early childhood, to have grown up there, grew up with friends that were lifetime friends, continue to be lifetime friends. It was just wonderful. And I think what stayed with me all these years later is the exposure to sports, to theater, to music, the kind of performers that came into town, the kind of education we got. And it was just wonderful. I went to boarding school after that, and then engineering school, and here a few decades later on these shores. So it's been quite the journey.
Well, it seems to be. But tell us a little bit about this storybook town. You said it was an industrial town. We have many industrial towns, like Tata has their steel plant. They have Birlas have theirs. Tell us a little bit about this. How big was it? Was Dad employed there? And who all were living there? Just walk us through that.
Yeah, sure. So it is Hindalco, Hindustan Aluminum. And I think it still is, but at one time it was the largest on the planet in terms of an integrated aluminum manufacturing facility. So from mineral to metal, it was unique in its own way. And Dad was a self-made man, grew up in, modest family, the youngest of the brothers. He has a younger sister, my aunt, and went to engineering school and got recruited, but, got a few good breaks, came to the States for training, et cetera, in the aluminum industry, went back and grew up to be the leader of the manufacturing capabilities of the metal, or rather the mineral to powder process. So alumina is the powder, and he was the president of that manufacturing business. And watching him, I learned, I think, a little bit. Hopefully carry it with me, but that's how we ended up in Renukoot.
So he was an engineer by profession?
He was a chemical engineer, yeah.
Chemical engineer. And he went to the US and then he came back.
That's right. He came here for training as part of the process of this industry being set up in India. So it was in collaboration with Kaiser Aluminum. which is a manufacturing, obviously, conglomerate at that time anyway, in the field. So lots of stories he brought back, but yeah, he did go back to the mothership. Um,
So tell us a little bit about the township. How big was it? You must have your own society, schools. Just tell us. I mean, I'm trying to. It seems you said it's a storybook, so I have that Bollywood image of that town in my mind. So I'm trying to kind of go from there.
it was not too far from any images you might have. If I would describe the town, the I'll get the numbers wrong, but obviously it started off with a few thousand people. I'm going to guess around 10,000, grew to about 10, 20, 25,000 employees, all the families, and then continued to grow after that. And of course, the whole ecosystem, hospitals and stores and shopping and all of that starts around it. The town wasn't very big. We had, I think, one movie theater when we were little, but the part of the town that we lived in is where the senior leaders were, and that was quite small, but it was storybook. Everything that you imagine. So the intersections of streets had sculptures, and the roads were literally washed every afternoon at 4 o'clock in the evening. Sprawling lawns and flowers, and there was a club and a swimming pool, and like I said, amazing amount of theater growing up. And you'll relate to some of these names, but think of the top performers from a music standpoint, dance. They were brought into town as guests, so we were exposed to more than we realized we were being exposed to, and I think a little bit of that stays with you. So in many ways, quite fortunate. I think of it as, was it a life of affluence? Maybe not, but a life of plenty. And it was it was wonderful to just kind of learn. And like I said, all those things stay with you as you grow up.
Well, it sounds like it, Sanjay. So it was a company town, like the firm, so to speak, but obviously not unlike the firm. You can leave. In the firm, you couldn't leave. And it seemed like they took really good care of it from a culture, education, and everything standpoint. So people wanted to grow there. Um, any siblings you had?
Yep, I have a younger brother,
Okay.
and then of course,
What is the age difference between the two?
he's 8 years younger than I am, and Dad and Mom gave us a lot. Like I was telling you, watching Dad, some of the things I think that I remember is this idea of what we would call today empathetic leadership, knowing the names of literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people that worked for him, thousands really, knowing whose kid was getting married, and asking them questions about the health of their mother or somebody that was sick, little things that just came naturally to him. I think that's a little bit of what I put on a pedestal anyway, and if anything, that becomes important. People leadership is so important in today's day and world. That's something that was really really special.
And you observed that growing up with him? I mean, you saw a lot of people come into the house and interact with him?
Oh, yeah, scores every day, and this was you kind of pick it up. Obviously as a child you're not paying attention to it.
You're a
It's
sponge,
happening around
basically.
you.
Yeah.
Even the way he interacted with people in public settings and so on, and he was well respected just for that. And if I think about it, it does take everybody together. So the neighborhood help. I will say this, right? Looking back as a child, when you grow up in these neighborhoods, they are storybook. I'm sure from an adult standpoint, it has all the benefits and all the challenges of being a small town. So I'm sure there was a little bit of that. But if I think of Mom and our teachers, I think, but Mom I'll start with. I mean, there was never a mountain too high. There was never a question that, that I would be in her eyes to this day continues that way, that there was nothing I couldn't do. And that sort of confidence in you does help. Listen, I'm speaking of myself that this, as if this is such an exception. I think every mother on the planet believes their child can do anything, everything, and then some. But you do benefit from things like that, and the support that you have all around you. So, um,
So, mom was a family maker?
mom was a family maker, and very dedicated family maker, and very much into everything that we were doing. Like I tell everybody here that asks, she taught me how to speak English and every other language that I speak, of course. But schooling, she was there to keep me straight, and if I was to digress, to get me back on track. So it was a nice. I have fond memories of the childhood for sure.
Oh, that's great. And those memories are, the most important thing we have. Uh, Sanjay, there's an 8 year difference between you and your brother. Were those 8 years a little lonely for you?
Yeah, there were. It started off obviously not to go into my family history, but there were incidents that weren't the most pleasant. But when he arrived, it was special. Um, I will say, though, growing up in a small town that with neighbors and friends, I mean, literally to this day, the friends that I had then are the friends that I have now, many more, but those are still friends. We don't know not knowing each other. I mean, we were born within months of each other, if not weeks of each other. We crawled together, we walked together. So there was this family, the sense of family. Everyone took care of each other. So those things did help. Although, yeah, I'm sure there was loneliness.
And then when your brother was born, it was a pretty exciting time, right?
Very, yeah, very exciting. Yeah. Um, and, you kind of grow up, into a house where you wait to have a sibling because everyone else in the neighborhood has a sibling or siblings. We never had sisters. So I always used to wonder about that and kind of miss having a sister. And to jump ahead, I said to my wife before we were married, presumptuously, and I still remember the stare she gave me when she didn't know if she was ever going to marry me. I said, if we don't have daughters, we'll adopt one and we'll name her Natasha.
Wow. And now,
And our older one is Natasha.
that's the punchline. I knew that. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
very much.
Fantastic. We call Lakshmi came home. But
That's
anyway, that's especially given we just had Diwali.
yeah.
But, that's great. Now, tell me about the schools there. How are the private schools there?
Yeah, they were. It was a private school, and then when I was 15, I went off to boarding school, and that was self-driven, not by my parents or not by any other. I really wanted to get out. I think there was some sense of. I look back and go, there must have been something in the back of my mind that said you're living a very insular, protected life, and you need to throw yourself into the world and really realize. It sounds grandiose, but I think that was there. And I also wanted to just see what it was like. There was a couple of friends of mine that had gone to, Cynthia and others, and I really wanted to get out. And I think there, if I think about the childhood and some of the grounding, you go there, and the first thing you realize is you have to make friends. I didn't know how to make friends because I'd never had to. So there's a lot of discomfort, but from that comes learning. From that comes, confidence that you can survive and build relationships. And then from there to engineering school, Berlin Institute of Technology. And I would say the friends I made at BIT were the most, how should I put it, the most rewarding part of friendship. To this day, they are the brothers that I lean on. And as you would agree, at that time when you're 17, 18, going into engineering, they know warts and all, they know me. You're as transparent as you always were. And when we are together, we're still 17 and 18-year-olds. So it was, and college was wonderful in terms of the opportunities to focus on engineering. I think one of the things that engineering school for me did, and I think does for a lot of people in India, because the workload is very different. I talk to my kids about this, and I'm sure you've heard this before. You take 8 courses every semester, for the 4 years you're in college. And if you add to it lab work, you're taking somewhere between 12 and 14 courses. So your life is a lot of work, and time management, leadership, communication skills. There's so much of that I look back and say that had to have benefited in some small way or big way. And whatever little I've been able to employ off that in my daily life and work life had to have helped, I have to believe, in some way. So, it's, and it does teach you humility when you're in the middle of hundreds of students and you're trying to compete and all of that. So I think all those pieces kind of come together in some way, I hope. but
Yeah, no,
but
they
it
do.
seems to have paid the bills anyway, paid the mortgage, fed the kids, and sent them to school.
I think they did a little more than that. But let's just, just go back a little bit one more time to the high school. How was it academically?
Academically, it was good. It was,
Rigorous, easy for you?
I would say, just as rigorous, bigger school, very different environment. And going from a small school, from, like I said, a very protected insular world.
But the primary school was easier?
I don't know that it was easier. There was a good amount of competition, even in the small classes we had. But think about, the teenager that goes off from this sort of an environment into a boarding school and is staying in dorms and sleeping in dorms and has the life run by bells from in the morning to by the time you go to bed.
And you
all
have
your-
different houses, this
Yeah.
house, that house.
Yes, indeed.
Been there, done that.
Indeed. It's,
But just coming back, because our viewers want a little bit more about. So, the primary school, were there subjects that you gravitated towards, Sanjay, when you were early on?
yeah, I would say, math and science was always something that I did gravitate towards. I remember Sanskrit was one I really struggled with. If there was one
Most
that would,
people.
it was,
You're not the only one. Most people.
it's sort of like Latin for your listeners that, and Sanskrit's a very, very complex, I would say, very progressed language in many ways, so structured. And that was something that was always a little bit of a challenge, I'll say. My friends might remember stories. I think we all did. But one of the things that, to that point, that I realized later in life is because I always did math and science. I was a child of math, science, analytics, however you want to think about it, all through my education. I felt like I'd missed out on the liberal arts. I felt like I'd missed out on history and philosophy and all of that, that I think makes you a full person. And I would see my kids here in America. You go to college, you have to take those things. And I felt like I'd missed it. So the glutton for punishment I went and put myself through a doctorate program. And I got a fair bit of exposure and all of that. So
We'll talk about that too. When you were, back in the primary school and a little bit in there, who would be helping with homework? Was it mom or dad, or just you were on your own?
no, I think Dad was a very hard worker, 14 hours days, including weekends. Mom would help. A lot of it was sort of self-policed, if you will, with a little bit of yelling from Mom every so often. Yelling would be a mild way of putting it, but all paid off, I guess. In some ways, I finished school and college, so it paid off. But yeah, Mom would help every so often.
And grades were pretty decent.
Grades were good. Yeah,
Grades were good.
grades
And
were
then,
good. Continued to be good, and
Yeah.
in engineering did very well, and then came here and did well. So yeah,
Yeah.
not bad.
So high school was boarding school.
High school was
So,
boarding. school.
you made the decision. Where did you go for boarding?
Boarding was Daly College. It's also one of those schools that goes back to the colonial times. Grand marble palaces and sprawling lawns and fields and cricket fields and football fields and squash courts and tennis courts and all of that. So it was a wonderful experience, and it had its challenges, like I said, just to get acclimatized. those that grew up there, if you will, and were there since kindergarten or middle school, they
They
didn't.
had their own cliques.
Sorry,
They had their own cliques, and you were coming in new.
I was actually, I've always felt welcomed into. There was a little bit of that, but I think you don't have to learn, if you will. When you arrive as a teenager, grown up, you have to learn how to learn in a setting that allows you to go to the study room for this hour and that. You can't be distracted. You don't have the luxury of waking up in the middle of the night or working late at night. All those kinds of things were new muscle that I had to develop.
Oh, that's very true, very true. But so you were out in the boarding school, and then you decided to go to BITS. What was the thought process? I mean, BITS is a pretty rigorous place to go to. So what was the thought? Because Dad had been an engineer.
Yeah,
Did Dad go to BITS by any chance?
no, he didn't.
Okay.
And
So what was?
I went to Birla Institute of Technology, which is in Mesra, so BIT, and the thought process was, I think, no different than most of us that grew up. It's engineering, it's medicine, it's math, it's sciences, and it felt like the right thing to do. It felt like the right career at that time to get into, because it opened up opportunities and avenues for other things. Not unlike today. In fact, more so since I left India. I think it opens up anything you want to do. I actually flirted with maybe coming here and going at one point to medical school. Definitely went to yeah, because I think education is just so rewarding. I mean, I was always, over the years, I think, and the beauty about American education system is, you could be a music minor or a music major in undergrad, and you could be anything you want to be, engineering or medicine or whatever. So I really found that just fantastic from an opportunity standpoint to be able to explore. And I think my kids have done that. And I look at them and I'm pleased at what they've been able to do.
Well, that's great. So obviously, BITS was a little challenging, but you built some great friendships there, right?
Oh, amazing friendships and really good foundation, I think, for experimentation and trying and failing and succeeding and all of that.
Yeah. And what was the focus? What kind of engineering were you focused on?
Mechanical.
Mechanical.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And the academic rigor was okay.
Academic rigor was very good. I performed very well. I will give credit to a couple of friends that would help me prepare. Not help me in the exam, just to be straight, but help me prepare.
Prepare, of course.
My extracurricular, in a good way, activities were a little bit much. I led the theater teams, and I was the chief editor for our magazine, and kind of traveled for competitions and all of that. So there was also a couple of friends whose faces are lit up as I speak to you, that would bring me notes from the classes and help me prepare. But with all of that, did well. Yeah, academically did well. No regrets.
So that's fantastic. But you did theater and some of these things. How did that come about? I mean, were you always interested in theater? Because engineering and theater kind of are a little.
No, I was always interested, and I think this goes back to Renukut. There was just an exposure to music and theater and drama and sports that was, I would say, we were really fortunate. It's something I really enjoyed. I loved writing. I actually wrote plays, and I directed, and the whole 9 yards, acted, all of that. Public speaking, when I was in boarding school, competed in the, I don't know what we called it back then, but public school competitions for debates. And so it was just something that always stayed with me through school, and BIT allowed you the latitude to do that. The friends did, the environment did, all of that. So it was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's very interesting. Do you think that drama, public speaking has helped you with interactions with whether it's clients, partners, or even in your personal life too?
I have to believe that it has helped. I think, broadly speaking, liberal arts, just understanding, communicating, I think self-confidence, and this is what we always, Neha and I, my wife and I always endeavored to do, was with our kids. The best gift a parent, I think, can give, and we've said this to them and others, we've spoken about it as friends, and I think we all agree, I'm sure you'll agree, the best gift you can give a child is that of self-confidence, because life is life. Life happens. You're going to have successes. You're going to have, whether they are failures or not so successes, that's going to happen. But if you have the self-confidence to just kind of keep going, keep on keeping on, I think that that helps. So I have to believe that all of that
Yeah.
helped and helps.
So you think some of your self-confidence came for doing the theater, doing well, from having that, pretty nurturing environment, as you said, in a storybook thing, Sanjay?
I'm Sanjay, you do this for a living, but I would say all of that went into the cauldron, and what came out was hot, steaming, and I guess it wasn't too bad tasting. So
It was
Uh,
actually pretty great tasting. Michelin. It came out to be a Michelin star recipe.
I wouldn't go
But
that far, but it's
well,
been okay.
well, there are different grades of Michelin star.
There
too,
you
but
go. There
just
you
kidding, just kidding. But no, but that's because I've not had. We have a lot of guests coming, and I've not had too many people who talk about drama. That's why I'm intrigued. Drama, public speaking, because I think you make a great point. In India, it's all or nothing. You go to engineering, then it's engineering. You go to medicine, it's medicine. And I have no judgment call as to what is a good education system. I just think that you pointed that having a broad based, it really opens you up to so many different things. I think that's what you're kind of talking about a little bit here.
I really believe it. I really believe it. I think communication skills, writing skills, being able to express yourself, all of these things are so important, because people don't know who you are, what you're about, or what you're thinking unless you can express it, and express it succinctly, effectively. I mean, as leaders, what do we do for a living? We make change happen, with our clients, with our customers, with our products, our services, with our people. And, that would be what I aspire for, is in any way, if I can be effective in communicating and making change happen, then I've done, what the organization and my people expect of me, our people expect of me.
Yeah, I think communication. I think um, eh, especially in the world of technology where we are so used to messaging, I think the personal communication is getting lost. But that's a topic for another podcast. So BIT ended. How well did you do there? How did you do, if you don't mind my
I
asking?
did very well.
Okay.
In my class, I didn't quite make top 10, but I was 11 when I graduated. So that was,
Oh, fantastic.
yeah,
Fantastic.
wasn't
That's
too bad.
congratulations.
Yeah.
So uh, at that point, already your mind was thinking about coming to the US?
A little bit. But the US was kind of interesting. I applied because a senior who happened to have some application forms, this is pre-internet, of course. And I applied to 3 schools, got accepted at all of them with promises of rides. Picked the first one because I didn't know any better, and actually paid off. Came here. We got married when we were still in school, or in college.
Now, where did you come for?
To Florida, Florida Tech, and Florida
Not a
Institute.
place, not a bad place to land.
Not a bad place. And Neha and I got married when we were still doing our masters. And
Wow. You met her in college there.
not in college.
Oh, complicated.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then
Yeah.
we got married, came here and rushed through masters, did very well, and got a job and got going and raised a family. And I think Natasha was born a couple of years after, so we were in our early 20s. I think I was 22. I think when I got married, something like that, and she's younger than I am. And but it was a wonderful journey, and the contrast between having the life I had in India and here, looking back, is interesting because, you come here as an immigrant and as a student with zero scaffolding. I'm the older brother, so there was no scaffolding. There was nothing to fall back on. So if you fail, you fail, and you don't recover from it. I don't know that you do. So just not having that, and of course not having any money at all, I think it was $300-400 a month that we made together after taxes and all of that. And in that, we paid our rent and everything else that goes with it. But just like the people that come in your lives, you look back and my wife, I'm very fortunate. She never made me feel poor. She always, even when we had nothing, she always made me feel, and together we felt like we had way more than our anniversary dinners were Pizza Hut and Burger King. And we loved it. We had a great time. So we traveled as much as we could. And here we are.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, how was it, coming from India, from BIT to Florida academically? Was it rigorous change? You were different systems. They kind of let you think. Be it's much more open. How was that?
Yeah, again, for my education, I continued the path of very much math, science, analytics, programming to some extent, but operations research, systems engineering. So it was very math and science. And honestly, I think I was fooled in some ways because I came practically after my college right away. There was a little bit of work in India, not much to speak of. Uh, the workload was much, much less based on what we just talked about. So it felt like I had all the time in the world. I taught. I was a teaching assistant, but it felt like I had enough time to have a good time and work hard. And the grades in the GPA couldn't get any better, so it was okay.
No, that's fantastic. Now, tell me, when you were planning to come to the US, what was dad and mom's reaction? Were they supportive? Not
Very,
supportive? Very
very
supportive.
supportive.
Okay.
They were very supportive. Apprehension, of course, worries, as you might imagine. Part of it, I think, helped because Dad used to travel the world, and he was comfortable with the idea of not just America, but he would travel in Europe and other places, and so he knew that he could come and visit. I was too proud to ask for anything, but at the same time, I think Mom had a hard time, but it's they were okay, very supportive. Yeah.
That's great. So now, after you graduated from Florida, what happened, Sanjay?
Well, we went looking for a job, and that's a whole story in itself. But the way I got the job was, I had printed resumes, and I was in this part of Connecticut, Massachusetts. That's very industrial and manufacturing heavy because that's kind of what I could lean on, and literally went and dropped off my resume at places. A lot of places said we're not hiring. I said, well, let me leave my resume anyway, and I got a call that Saturday, and I started work, manufacturing engineering on the shop floor. Learned a lot in this part of Connecticut, northeastern part of Connecticut. A lot of Italian immigrants that taught me so much. I still refer to it, and steel-toed shoes and all that, and learned just a tremendous amount there, working with people on the line, and like I said, I still use much of that.
So you got a job in Connecticut on the shop floor, doing engineering stuff. How long did you stay there?
We were there for about 4 years, and then we moved to the Midwest, to Ohio, with General Motors and EDS. That was a nice kind of transition into our baby now, Natasha. Our baby then was a couple of years old, maybe a year and a half, 2 years old. And we moved there, and we had Shivani while we were in Dayton. And then we moved to Michigan from there.
All with GM.
All with GM. When Shivani was barely a year old, we moved to Michigan, and then we've stayed in Michigan ever since. And now we have other places that we live as well, including where I am now. We have a house in Atlanta that we,
Sure.
but still Michiganders.
Michigan is home.
Yeah, we're Midwesterners, Michiganders, by all stretches of imagination.
Yeah. So from GM, where was the journey?
So I got recruited by Pricewaterhouse, and that then became PricewaterhouseCoopers. I was a partner with grew into partnership. And IBM, like I say, bought us as a firm, consulting firm, all the partners in our business.
The consulting piece.
Early 2000, yeah. I was a consulting partner. I was running supply chain in the automotive industry then, and I came over to IBM as global automotive industry leader. So just loved that journey of PwC. The whole partnership model is something I really enjoyed. Very entrepreneurial, learned a lot, tremendous amount. IBM was a wonderful journey as well. So yeah, it was still in Michigan, never moved. Ran global businesses, traveled around the world, put 3 million miles on my airline, but yeah, it's
global services, etc.
Yeah, very much, very much. All my roles have been global in some way, shape, or form. Through JCI, where I was the CIO, again, global responsibility. But again,
Johnson
a lot of learning,
Controls.
a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And then now, obviously, you are at JLL. What does the head of work, just for our listeners, can you just give a very brief understanding of what that means?
Yeah, so think about a workplace, and it can be anything. In today's world, it's also third places like homes and cafeterias and airplanes and all of that. But really, if you think about data centers, if you think about offices, manufacturing, distribution, warehouses, if you just imagine the amount of technology and transformation that's going into spaces to be managed, smart buildings is just one example. Touchless this and touchless that, sensors everywhere, analytics, AI, helping you manage the buildings better, and locating and finding spaces that are suitable and needed for organizations to succeed. It is the largest line item of spend outside of people in any Fortune 500, Russell 2000 company. So that's what we do. And the fun part for me is I'm not a commercial real estate guy by birth, clearly, but technology is now ubiquitous. It's across industries, and in many ways, I've enjoyed reinventing myself even when I ran IBM's global cloud services. It was financial services, banks, and insurance companies, and automotive, and aerospace, and chemicals, and petroleum, and touched every industry as we were doing that. So this nomadic life across industries has been very rewarding.
Yeah. And then you also went and got a PhD.
Yeah.
What drove you to that?
You
just wanted to be called doctor because you were thinking of going to medicine.
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt, Sanjay. But no, that would be. I think it was the itch to scratch was I felt like I had missed something. That history is very rich. And in school, I thought of history as dates and times and wars and events. But history really teaches you a lot. In philosophy, I mean, I couldn't spell philosophy to save my life. But I think you do learn from, philosophers that have really been thinkers. So I think all of those things is what made me curious. And I had been around transformation of organizations even then all my career. So one of the things that I knew I would do is I would do my dissertation and my work around transformation and how do they succeed in organizations. So I think that helped accelerate my academic piece of the PhD and all the research piece and all the things that you have to do for your dissertation. So it was quick, under 5 years, 4.5 or so, which is fast for a doctoral program. And I did a lot of that on planes to Japan and to China and Singapore and every other part of the world, because back then it was a boon in disguise. You didn't have internet on the planes. So you weren't interrupted by work. So you could actually write, and you do end up writing a lot in your doctoral programs. So wrote a lot.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, not easy. After being away from academics for a long time, I think it's really hard. So really, congratulations on that. So When you look back, Sanjay, especially your childhood, what are the two, three, uh, great memories that you can think of? Well, that tells us a lot about the person also.
I think we touched on many of the memories. It's
Mm.
the
Pick
family.
some specific ones if you don't mind.
We were very much a, what's the right word, a nuclear family. Um, I would just go to the opportunities I had to be creative. Yeah, whether it's theater, and the opportunities we had to compete, to travel. Uh, they, my dad, like I said, was very much workaholic. Has negative connotations, but if you just take the positive connotations off that, there were years that he didn't leave town, if you can believe it. This small town, 100 miles from the next big city, he was there 7 days a week. The man worked 6.5 by his definition, but he really was thinking about work even Sunday afternoon. So I think those things from a work ethic standpoint stay with you. But at the same time, all the other things we talked about, empathy, um, all those things kind of stand out. There wouldn't be moments other than sort of the descriptive, going to boarding school, seeing new friends in college, all of those, getting in trouble, getting in trouble,
Of
getting in
course.
trouble.
Those are always,
Yeah, those are.
uh, and some songs that remind you of some great moments too. But we won't go there. So, dad's empathy, his hard work as a workaholic. Are you a workaholic too?
I try to balance.
I mean, and again, as you said, I call it a driven person. Person who really enjoys what they do,
Yeah,
and they get
I
paid
enjoy.
for, and they get paid for it,
I
for what they
absolutely
enjoy.
enjoy what I do. I
Okay.
absolutely get up in the morning, energized about doing what we do, and have. I mean, listen, we all have bad days and bad parts of our career, but I really couldn't look back and say, "Boy, that was a lousy time in my life when I really hated what I was doing." Why the heck would you do it if you hate what you're doing? So yeah, absolutely. But I try to find balance, and we both Neha and I are golfers. When it's not snowing in Michigan, we love the theater, so we're in Broadway every so often. We love to dance. We love music. She sings. I try to sing every so often. All those things. So yeah, it's it's
So you got a good balance.
yeah.
Georgia has some good golf courses,
They do.
as you know,
And Michigan. Yeah.
and Michigan too. No, that's great. If you were to point to one or two uh, key inflection points in your life where things could have gone differently, which ones would they be? And just we try to pinpoint some decisions for our listeners who are looking at decision points.
This isn't just being lighthearted about it. Marrying the wrong girl would have been right on top of that list. No, I kid you not, right? That really shapes your.
I'm not touching that, man. Okay.
So no, I only say that to
Of course.
highlight.
No, that's an important
Right,
aspect.
relationships are an important part of your lives.
Absolutely.
I think kids shape you. They teach you so much. They teach you way more than what you maybe teach or impart to them.
Are you learning from them?
Oh, every day, every second, and they are not bashful about teaching me. Yeah, they're both.
Yep. Tell
They're
me
both,
about it.
as you might imagine, very self-confident, very feisty young ladies, and
They don't hold back.
whether they have permission at times or not, they don't.
They don't hold back.
That's right. So that's, I think, I don't know if that's an inflection point, but it's a really, really important.
Anything else in your past that maybe going to BIT, was that an inflection point?
Yeah, I think boarding school, going to BIT. I think boarding school was a huge leap for me.
And that was you, right?
That was all me. That
was all
100% me. And in fact, at that time, my parents were like, "Why would you do that?" My teachers were like, "Why would you do that?" And even my friends, why? They asked my parents, "Why would you do that?" At such a critical time in a child's life, because I was a child. I mean, I left when I was 15, I think, or something, 14,
Now,
15.
if you had not gone to boarding school, you think your journey would have been different?
Oh boy, I never thought about it that way. I think
That's why we talk about
I think
inflection
so.
point.
I think it would have been different because I would have missed out on that part of my life where I was stretched, if you will, to build relationships and make friends and adapt to new circumstances. Whether it would have been good or bad is something that we will never know. But I would have missed out on that, and I wouldn't want to miss out on that experience.
Hmm. That's a good point. Anything else that you think was momentous like this? I mean, there are a lot of things, but
Yeah,
anything that strikes.
I think what I said earlier about this idea of reinvention and taking some risks, and going to new industries and taking on new roles. It little by little, I think those are probably the bricks in the foundation that seem to be holding so far. So
They've done fairly well. Uh, Sanjay, all our guests uh, on the show talk about the role of mentors. And, mentors come in different shapes, sizes. They're formal, informal, family, parents, grandparents, etc. Have mentors played any role in your life?
100%. I think neither one of us, I'm sure Sanjay, you agree with me, neither one of us would be doing what we're doing in any shape, any magnitude, if you will, if it wasn't for mentors that took risks with us and tapped us on the shoulder and said, you know what, I'm going to throw you and you'll figure out how to swim. All along, I mean, the people that I could describe to you, one of the earliest ones, going back to my first job, was my boss, I guess. He was an English major, and like I said, I would always enjoy writing, so I would write even a letter or a memo. And one of the things he always taught me was how just being frugal with words when you write can convey the same message. And I had a tendency of adding more words than necessary. It comes with a little bit of I think the way Indian English or English is written versus American English, it's much more efficient. How we write here in the States. So that was new learning. There were mentors that really out of the blue said, I'm going to give you responsibility for this massive, global responsibility. That was a mentor in many ways. And people that allow you to take risks and fail, and people that say, we get it. You want to leave after, this lovely career at this company and you want to go somewhere, but I'm going to come and get you when I'm ready for you. And she did. So those are people that you look up to and go, not bad. I was lucky.
That's great.
I was lucky
Yeah.
for sure, fortunate.
Yeah. And, reaching out to great mentors. Sanjay, you obviously had an incredible career, and obviously you still have so much more ahead of you. And it's in the world that we live in today with technology and things moving so fast, it's really hard to predict. But if you were to look at a crystal ball and just take a look in the near term future, where do you see your journey going, or where would you like to see your journey go?
I really think we are at a point that the domain of knowledge is expanding like it has never expanded before. I mean, everyone talks about artificial intelligence, but it really is a catalyst to change anything and everything we do. So from a learning standpoint, you and I talked a little bit about, I look at my daughters. The older one is in public health, around quality of care, really focused on that. She's passionate about what she's done, everything from inner cities to quality of health. And our younger one is a privacy lawyer, attorney. And I look at how their lives are shaping and changing. And of course, there's a lot of pride that you hear in the voice. But at the same time, I want to be, learning the rest of my breathing time. And I think that's how I see it. Now, if along the way, if there's anything in a small way I can give back, whether it's through teaching leadership, or running businesses, being part of boards. All of that is, I think, rewarding. I'm on a board now, on an external board now. It's very rewarding to kind of learn as much as share. So all of those things are in the cards. And write some more. Maybe write another book, because I wrote a book that did well. So maybe another one.
Wow, you got a PhD, you wrote a book, you're saying, my God, I feel so underemployed. But that's a great thought. So you think teaching would be good, and self-learning in looking into the future. I think self-learning is critical. I think you point that out again and again, which I think is so important.
Yeah, and the place I'm in, our team is just fantastic. The culture is amazing. Um, I would say this is as good a place from a culture and a passion for work that I've seen in my entire career, where people just wake up in the morning and are hungry, motivated to do the right thing. So I'm really privileged, really fortunate to do what I'm doing, and I'm really enjoying every minute, like I said. So continuing that and doing all the other things.
I say knock on wood. You can't see it, but I'm knocking on wood. So may that journey continue. Uh, Sanjay, we took you into the future. We'll just take you briefly into the past. Just pretend this is another Sanjay, but this is a Sanjay that's coming out of BIT. One or two brief pieces of advice that you would give yourself who's coming out of BIT.
I think on the things that paid off well for me, it would be this idea of taking risks and reinventing yourselves. Um, Honestly, I couldn't point to something that I would go back and say, make sure you don't do this or that. I think I would, at the risk of sounding too grandiose, and that's what I'm worried about as we talk about this. This comes across very self-serving, but you're so good at it. You're pulling at stuff that I think I've over the last few years, I've been attracted to what Gita, and this isn't like a spiritual, but it is a little bit of, there's something pretty valuable in whatever way of, picking up a little bit here, a little bit there, and drips and drabs is all I'm talking about. But it does shape your thinking. And I would have done a few things differently if I had embraced some of the things that I would have picked up in, I think of it as philosophy as much as anything else. So I would have told my younger self, don't be a know-it-all, and maybe venture into that part of philosophy a little bit more.
Fantastic. So, just continue taking risk and maybe spend a little more time in spirituality and learning a little bit more about that. Great advice. Um, Sanjay, towards the end of our show, we generally ask our guests, to give us very brief, we call it lightning round questions. Your definition, you kind of have defined it, but your definition of Indianness.
I think Indianness, especially with everything that's going on in the world now, reminds me that Indianness is about inclusiveness. And I think about it, and I've actually thought about it a fair bit. It's something that you grow up with. Diversity is something that is all around you every day, afternoon. Economic diversity, racial diversity, every part of the societal diversity in India, and language. Geez, language diversity in India is so amazing. Cultural diversity, the sense of dressing and customs and rituals, if you will, if I could broadly talk about that. You're just born in it, you grow up in it. So the idea of speaking a different language or writing in 3 different scripts is, passe. It is what it is. So I think inclusiveness is what comes to mind, more than a one word answer.
No, but that's a great answer. Inclusiveness. I agree with you. That's yeah. Uh, so the final question to you is: someone not related to you, someone who is alive, could be from India or anywhere in the world, as long as they are of Indian origin, that you admire a lot?
It would be a third, a third, a third of three different people. I do like, and not to get political from what I see as happening in India, but I like a third of what the leadership has done in terms of creating aspiration for people that never had aspirations. And I think that's a gift that is for generations. So I would take at least a third of that. I would take a third of a public speaker in the past or in the present that is able to, again, I have a bias towards communication, and but one that does it with humility. So since you're talking about people in India, I mean, I've got a lot that I think about, and
Or it can be here too, or anywhere
our
else.
home. But it's somebody that somebody told me this a few years ago. Is, as a leader, a trait that is the hardest to find and the most valuable is humility. So a person like that, and then there would be the rest of the third would be around somebody that is just brilliant at their field.
Anyone specific in mind?
Well, I
Yeah,
think
we are looking for some names here.
Think of a
Sanjay.
few people, right? It's a
Pick-
it's a
just throw
conglomerate
any name.
of sports enthusiasts or sportsmen. I mean, I haven't followed cricket in a long time, but
There's a World Cup going on.
yeah,
Sanjay,
I
but
mean, this is
anyway.
a good year for India's World Cup. I mean, I
Yeah.
literally stopped watching cricket for a while. I mean, these guys are doing something pretty amazing. And again, setting just in the Indian context, the opportunity there for vocalists and musicians, the confidence I see over the years and people, the way it's grown up. So it's a bits of all of those. There isn't one person I put on a pedestal, other than the parents I spoke of. But so I would say that's how I would think about it.
Yeah. So, but that's good. A third, and third. I like that. We haven't had that before. But Sanjay, thank you so very much for sharing, because it's not easy to share. Believe me. We take you back in the journey, but your journey is an amazing journey. Amazing parents. What a great upbringing, and then your journey here, and also you leave us with a good message. Marry the right person. But anyway, but. Thanks again. Really, really appreciate you being here.
You bet. And I should close by saying probably one defining moment was the choice to come to America. I mean, we adopted this country that I've always said is probably the most charitable of nations in the world. And, when you become a part and parcel of a fabric and you do what we do here, that was definitely defining moment. But listen, you're really good at this, and I hope this doesn't come across like I'm beating my chest, but you asked the questions and I answered them as honestly as I could. So I loved it. I enjoyed it, and looking forward.
No, and thank you. It's not me being good. You're good. Really, this is your show. But thank you again, Sanjay. Thank you very much.